Good evening or good morning, depending on when you're watching this, everybody. Welcome back to Hoops HD. This is our weekly Monday evening Hoops HD report, recording it here a little after 9 p.m. Eastern on Monday, December 28th, our last Hoops HD report of 2020. Good riddance to this year.
Yes.
I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined first off up top here by David Griggs and John Stalika. And in the second row below us, we have John Titel and Joey Fortson. And we've got I don't know that we have a lot to get to. We've got some important games that happened at least to get to, as there wasn't as much action this week as there was just because of the holiday and everything.
Yeah. How many Christmas parties did you all get thrown out of?
None.
Well, okay. Including the one at Chad's house, I was kicked out of, I think, 4. And 4 is the number that I went to.
We're supposed to be socially distancing. We should not be gathering this year, David. Come on now.
I just go where the alcohol is.
Anyhow, we're going to get right into things here as opposed to listening to David. And like I said, there is a fair amount to get to here if and only if we can actually get the screen to work. And that is always a 50-50.
The screen never works. I love how every week it's if we can get the screen to work.
Chad, we can cover the games. We can cover the games Monday through Friday if that's okay.
There we go. All right, here we go. And we're going to start tonight off in the Big Ten
Conference
because it's the conference that clearly had the most games played this week, first of all, and had the most I mean, just was crazy everything that happened here. And I guess, Titel, let me start with you because we just saw what we all thought was a pretty darn good Wisconsin team. Was up to number 6 or number 7 in the rankings, depending on which poll you're looking at. Lose a home game to Maryland, and just the Big Ten doing what it's been doing since the season started.
Cannibalizing itself, you say. Yeah, I was liking my decision to discuss the Badgers a lot more an hour ago. They beat Michigan State on Christmas, but they had the 6-point loss to the Terps tonight to drop to 8-2. They're going to host Minnesota on New Year's Eve, which is looking like a hell of a game right now. They're doing it on both ends of the court. 42% shooting behind the arc. They only allow 39% inside the arc, both top 10 in the nation. And they're one of the few teams in the country with 5 senior starters. The stat I liked from the broadcast, their starting 5 is older than the Chicago Bulls starting 5, which is ridiculous, but true.
Oh, wow.
They only commit 8 turnovers a game. They usually allow fewer than 60 points a game. I had them as a 2 seed yesterday. I'm probably going to drop them to a 3 seed tomorrow.
Yeah, Wisconsin. After that win in Michigan State. But, Joby, this might be more of a problem with Michigan State, especially with Wisconsin's win there, given that Wisconsin turns around and loses at home, especially because as we record this, it's not on the screen there because it hasn't technically gone final, but Michigan State's down by 22 points at Minnesota in the second half right now, and also lost the Wisconsin game.
I'm just in shock by this, and we'll discuss a few teams. I mean, when we get to the SEC, we'll mention Kentucky. What the hell's going on? Every conference has one of their blue bloods just completely defying preseason expectations of top 10 team in the country. And this, Michigan State is exhibit A of that. I'm confused, and maybe it's because Izzo is so good at preparing a team before the season that they just don't have the system down yet, and maybe they'll be stronger as the year goes on. That's a theme you'll hear me say more than once tonight, that might be the biggest effect of COVID on these teams that require a system-style defined, where it's almost a coach-led in a lot of ways, team in a lot of ways, rather than pure athletics. But then you get to Wisconsin, who is very similar in that way, and it hasn't stopped Wisconsin, as John Titel, for the most part, as John Titel pointed out earlier. But Michigan State, you got to think they're going to turn the car around, but in this shortened season, this shortened opportunities, you don't get as many chances to recover, and we'll see how it goes because they're about to be 0-3.
They're about to be. Oh, go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say that to David. I wanted to kind of look at the other half of what's going on with this Michigan State-Minnesota game right now, and that is the Gophers, who are coming off a win over Iowa. This is about to be their second top 10 win of the week.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they're former top 10.
Well, yeah, a team that we weren't really expecting much out of. There's another team we were expecting even less out of that we're going to get to in a minute, but like not expecting much out of. And even when they bloated out their record to 5-0, 6-0, it's like, well, okay, they went to the bakery. They haven't really had to lift any heavy weight yet, but now they are. Now, to be fair, as Stalika said before we went on the air, much of this is being done at the barn. They haven't been on the road yet, but I mean, when you have the kind of week that Minnie has had, how are you not impressed by that? Like, I was impressed when they beat St. Louis. I was blown away when they beat Iowa, and I don't know what I am tonight.
There was only one road game that Minnesota has played, and that was at the Spaceship in Illinois. But to be fair, not many teams are going to win there this year outside of Illinois.
Yeah, Minnesota but they're crushing Michigan State. They beat Iowa at home. And Stalika, though, as David kind of hinted at, they're not even the biggest story in the Big Ten. How about the team on the left-hand side of the team sheets there? Out of nowhere, ranked in the top 25 polls. Who had it at the start of the season? The Northwestern Wildcats will be probably the best team in the Big Ten so far.
Well, I think if this were the Bizarro Hoops HD broadcast, sure.
That's what this is.
I think we called both of these teams Rutgers last year because they were home court heroes to the teeth. But the thing is, Northwestern, they actually got a road win at Indiana mixed in along with wins against Michigan State and now Ohio State over the weekend where they had to come back.
Yeah, there is just so many storylines here. When you look at the AP and the coaches poll ratings, you have Michigan, who's in there, by the way, undefeated. They're the team of the conference, and they're in the top 15. And Illinois is in the top 15, and Rutgers is the top 15 team. And, by the way, we've got Iowa, and we've got Ohio State still in the top 25. David, it's insanity in this conference.
Yeah, it is. And it's like 9 teams in the top 25. Like more than a third of it is the Big Ten. And and then Maryland maybe making a case that they belong in after their big win the night. That's a little bit unprecedented. And I know that like as the year goes on, they're going to play each other. Somebody's going to like have trouble keeping pace and they're going to fall out of the rankings. But I mean, this is just – I've never seen a performance like this from the conference. I mean, generally we've seen 6 and 7 teams in the NCAA tournament from the Big East and the Big Ten, but we've never seen 2/3 of the conference in the top 20, basically. And it just goes to show you he's not there anymore. But what Tim Miles did to build this conference up and like how everyone else is succeeding now that he's gone.
Silence. David, we have the buzzer back. We have
one of the new features. When did they get the buzzer back?
One of 2 new features actually for this podcast. I forgot to mention at the top when we pulled the screen up, but you might also see something new here in between the net and the strength of schedule on these where we have all these metrics. We used to have the RPI shown here. It's kind of gotten outdated. It's officially been dumped off of our screens.
What is that?
OAR, what the OAR stands for is overall average ranking. What I've done with OAR is taking an average of a team's net plus the 3 resume and the 3 predictive metrics, all 7 metrics, average them together, rank them against everybody's average 1 through 357. So that gives you an absolute average of every possible ranking. It may kind of, if you're not certain which ranking to look at, you kind of average them all together, right?
That's pretty good. Thanks for doing that and for pointing that out. And yes, I guess this is in the workbooks now.
Chad, let me point out when you're talking about the strength of this conference, we have the J&G, which measures it's a resume metric, but also look at the strength of record because I think they're very similar if you look at the resumes, and that's pure resumes, no bias anymore that you see like from Pomeroy, an awesome formula, but it's a different formula. On pure metrics, look at how many tournament teams there are. And that doesn't include Maryland that's pre-win at Wisconsin. Now, Maryland might not jump all the way to, you need to be about 50th right now to be in the at-large field. Look at all that. They're not just in the field. They're on the top half of the field. There's protected seeds galore. This conference is insane. Now, David correctly pointed out, a team like Indiana at 5-4 better watch themselves because, a 13 and 12 team is not making the NCAA tournament most likely, no matter how good your schedule was. But this year, this is just the depth of the Big Ten. It looks like the Big 12 of years past, where there is no weak team beyond Nebraska in this particular case.
Well, because Tim Miles is not at Nebraska anymore. I mean, if he were, they would be
on that
really
buzzer,
good.
Yeah, we're learning the new buzzer system here, guys. I'm sorry. We're working on it. With this new system here, we're working on it. But let's go ahead and take a look at what's actually coming up over the course of the next week. And what's sure to be just, if you're looking at what's circle to watch this week, just watch every one of these games. Tata, let me start with you. Here's the list of games this week. Is there any in particular that you are circling, or is it just, like I mentioned, all of them?
All of them. If I had to pick one, I think Iowa at Rutgers is fantastic. I wish the rack would be full because that would be a headline game. Even so, it should be fantastic.
Yeah, Iowa. You look at that first. Rutgers has got to get past Purdue, who is another team that is actually got a couple votes in the coaches poll this week. You've got.
Yeah, there's one I'd like to point out, Chad.
Yeah.
Suddenly, this Northwestern Iowa game, it's it's really interesting. Can Northwestern win on the road? I know they won at Indiana, but this is having to lift more weight on the road. And can Iowa, who as recently as yesterday was ranked in the top 5, avoid losing their third straight game? So a little bit of storylines going on for both teams going into that one.
There's a fight for first place that comes on Sunday.
And then Northwestern has Michigan over the weekend on the road also. So it's a huge week for Northwestern.
Yeah.
Who thought we'd be saying that?
Chad, I would strongly say the games to watch are games like Purdue, Rutgers, Purdue, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland. Those games are what I was referring to, that some teams are going to fall off, as David pointed out. Those are the prime suspects. If someone loses 2 in a row, if Penn State, if Indiana loses both Penn State and Maryland, they're in deep trouble because this conference will not allow you. You're not going to get cupcakes to build up your record back up. So those are the games I'd watch, are those bubble games, because I'm not worried all of a sudden about Northwestern right now. Maybe I will later, but not right now.
There is one rivalry game that we haven't even mentioned, and that's Minnesota-Wisconsin here.
Yeah.
Let's go
all Bunions.
All
basketball.
backs.
Yeah, it's just going to Michigan and Maryland. Throw that one in there. I mean, this is just, unless you're playing Nebraska, it's going to be a good game.
And that's only because Tim Miles isn't there anymore. Just imagine if he was. We need to get rid of the buzzer. I don't like that thing.
Let's jump over to the Big 12 here, and we'll get an even better buzzer next week. We were trying to throw that together last minute. But when you want to talk about a conference, really only 2 games, and they were almost a full week ago now. But if the Big 10 is not the best conference, it's because of the fact that you have 4 top 10 teams and 5 top 14 teams in the Big 12 conference here. Let's kind of start at Joe, let's start at the top with Baylor. They didn't play this week, but they're the only team other than Gonzaga getting votes in the top to be number 1 in the nation.
I think it's right now of what we've seen this year, though. Yeah, there are some impressive teams popping out, especially in the conference that we just left. But I truly believe right now, just eye test, there are 2 teams that are steps above everybody else at this stage. Baylor is one of those teams. I think we all know the other. And they've combined their length with good guard play. And that was before they always, did they have the appropriate ball movement guard play? They have that. They got lucky on the returns from the NBA draft. It is a fun team to watch. It is a good team to watch. This is a Final Four national title contender. No 2 ways about it.
Can we pull up Baylor's profile here, Chad?
Give me a second. Sure. Okay. David, Baylor's profile is coming up. I'll pull up Kansas as well, which we'll get to in a minute. I'll just tell about them. But David, Baylor is coming up here on the left-hand side with only the win over Illinois of note so far.
Yeah, only the win of note. But like what Joby said, the eye test has been impressive. I mean, they blew out nobody that they've played is particularly good, Illinois excluded. But I mean, they've just really shown up huge. And you hate that some of their games got canceled, particularly the one against Gonzaga, who is undoubtedly the other team I think Joby was thinking of that's way ahead of everyone else. I don't know if they have room on their schedule, but God, if they do, please make it happen against Houston. They're right there. Everybody wants it. I want it. But when it comes down to merit, the problem with Baylor right now is that they just have the win against Illinois. The thing about that is that when you play in the Big 12, help is on the way. They're going to play West Virginia. They're going to play Kansas. They're going to have 6 games against current top 10 teams, so they'll get their chances.
Yeah. Just want to quick point out here on the team sheets here. We're here in yellow. That is the OAR number. We've actually had this number for a long time. The number in parentheses is the OAR ranking. It's just a number that I'm just pulling into the other screen right now. So if you're looking for the OAR on these team sheets as you look at them, look at that number in yellow in parentheses. The hard number, the actual average number is the first number. The ranking is the second number. But Titel, the team on the right there, though, when you look at resume, despite a loss to the best team in the nation, Kansas has done it all, including that win, this very good, nice win over West Virginia this week.
I was very sour on them when they gave up triple digits to the Zags on Thanksgiving, but 8 wins since then. They opened up conference play with 2 huge wins over Texas Tech and West Virginia. They host the Longhorns in a huge game this Saturday. Top 25 in the nation in rebounding, 43 boards a game. Not just because they have a huge big man inside, starting backcourt, 3 guards who are all at least 6'5". And even though conference play is getting underway for everyone, I think the best non-conference game of the year, besides that Kansas-Gonzaga game, might be in a month when they head to Knoxville to play Tennessee. They're not a slam dunk for a 1 seed. I think they are certainly in the conversation.
Go back to the team sheets, Chad.
Sure.
Okay. One of the problems with Kansas, and this, I just have to say this, is – they almost had a sub-200 loss. They really had to sweat it out against Kentucky.
Look, now with net rankings not out, I'm actually joking. I'm using your JNG here this week as the baseline to determine what tier teams are in. But Kentucky, at least according to JNG, is a tier 4 victory right now.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
You know what? You take away any preseason bias rating, and they are a 1-6 200 plus.
Stalika, let's quickly talk about the other couple other teams here, and the big one was Texas Tech. It was a close game. It was a good game. They did pull out a 2-point road win at Oklahoma last week, which I think was a tough loss for Oklahoma, who could have really used the win, but they'll have their chances as well.
Well, it was also a big win for Texas Tech because they were already coming off a close home loss against Kansas right here, so it's still going to be important that the Red Raiders at least get a win against the bottom half of the Big 12 right here. So on the other hand, if you're a team like Oklahoma, that was also a missed opportunity to get into the top half and at least start to solidify what could be a tournament profile yourselves.
Yeah, we've got the upcoming schedule here. Everybody does have one non-conference, or not everybody, but there's a bunch of non-conference games here during Tuesday and Wednesday, and then back into the heart, really into conference play. We already mentioned the Texas-Kansas game. We've got Oklahoma State at Texas Tech, and we've got West Virginia with a pair of games at Oklahoma and at Oklahoma State that David, that's going to tell us a lot about West Virginia, those 2 games.
Yeah, it really will. I would like it if Baylor were to drop Central Arkansas and pick up Houston. Is there any way Zach could make that happen since he controls all this stuff?
I'll tell you what. Let's talk about the number 1 team in the nation before we go much further here, because
a bit of breaking news on them right now. I don't know if you guys are watching this or not, but it looks like they're going to remain undefeated.
They are currently up by 20 points on Northern Arizona at home in the first half. It's going to be a complete blowout. They beat Northwestern State. I believe they beat them twice last week. And then, of course, Joby, I gotta go to you with this here. The Zags pretty much destroyed your Cavaliers there.
Yeah, I mean it was a curb stomping, no 2 ways around. You gotta love a team. I mean, where do you start? You gotta love a team. Kispert nails 9 threes. Timmy almost gets 30 points. By the way, a Bennett team, needless to say, has never given up 2 30-point scores in the same game, let alone they rarely gives up one. But that inside-outside scoring ability, when then you combine it with Suggs, stirring the drink, beautiful. I mean, and what you broke down, there was a great breakdown of Kispert's 9 threes, and his drive to the basket. Every one of them, except for a half-court shot, were beautifully executed plays, pick and rolls or kick-outs done beautifully, designed by few. It was like, this wasn't, from a Virginia perspective, this wasn't Carson Edwards in the Elite Eight just going off, even though, DeAndre Hunter had a hand in his face. It was beautifully designed plays to get the open shot that you will see. Yeah, and when you have these weapons, and Suggs, so young, so good, combining it with the veteran of Nimard, this team, wow, you just have got to say it is the total package right now.
They really are. And when you look at them, I highlighted the row there. Look at where they are number one in all the rankings. I don't know what's wrong with the BPI having them fourth. They number one offense in the nation, one of the top 20 defenses. They run one of the fastest tempos in the nation. They are just across the board so darn good.
Right.
I've looked at this Gonzaga team play, and I say to myself, I don't know that anybody, including Baylor, can beat them this year.
I think to be fair, Chad, they were being compared to 1991 UNLV and 2015 Kentucky in that list.
Right. But, anyway, one of the things that was so impressive about the Virginia win is that there are teams that if you're really good, you can kind of go out there and be you and just be better than the other team. And there's other teams like Virginia to where you kind of have to take them out of what it is they like to do in order to beat them. And Gonzaga did that. This is a team that plays that really intense pack line defense that just sandbags teams. I mean, they shut down some really potent offenses. Gonzaga putting up 95, having that kind of efficiency against a defense like that just makes me wonder, like, is there anybody that plays any style that they can't adapt to and get control of the game in? And I'm thinking the answer to that is no.
Well, I don't think any of those teams in the teams in this conference are the answer. Just a quick look at the rest of the West Coast Conference. I know that BYU picked up another win. They're 9th already on the season. But Titel, if you wanted to talk about another team in this conference.
Possibly the most well-rested team outside of the Patriot League Pacific. 3-1 this year, only a road loss at Nevada. They played twice in November. They played twice in December. They're taking the rest of the month off. They got 2.5 weeks off. They had to BYU on January 7th to open conference play. They cannot shoot to save their life. The good news is they have not allowed more than 70 in a game all season on defense. 4 of their top 5 scorers are seniors, so Coach Stoudemire, at least he can rely on his veterans. The best news, they only have to play the Zags once this year, so it looks like whoever made their Christmas scheduling wish, it came true.
There's the upcoming schedule. As we mentioned, Gonzaga playing Northern Arizona right now. Got another game tomorrow night against Dixie State. Then they get into conference play this weekend with San Francisco, who they're hosting. BYU at Pepperdine and San Diego coming up. St. Mary's, who had a embarrassing loss to San Diego State, has a couple of home games this week also.
They looked pretty good before that, but, God, they did not look good in that game.
Let's jump over to the ACC, the other half of that Gonzaga Virginia game, where obviously we know that we'll discuss what happened there. But David, I want to ask you about Louisville, who had a classic game against Kentucky because the game was awful and almost barely watchable.
Oh, my God. Well, it seemed like, these two teams play every year, and there was a stretch which seemed to go on for more than a decade and maybe even longer than that, where both teams were ranked really high, and it's this big rivalry and all this energy going into the game, and it would just be like this ugly mud fight of a game. The last couple years, the game had been really good, really well played, really exciting, and then this year it kind of reverted back to just a really sloppy, ugly game. And I don't know, one of the theories that I think we talked about before was that maybe the rivalry was a little too hot, like teams came out a little too fired up. This is a very, very heated rivalry, by the way. I know all of you know that. It is I'm not going to say it's the biggest rivalry, but I will say that there probably aren't but maybe one or two that are more bitter than this one. I don't know if that has something to do with why the play is typically poor by both teams, but it was certainly, again, really sloppy, not watchable, other than that the game was close, and I guess that made it somewhat exciting at the end.
Yeah, but Louisville does get the win. You see, there's actually some pretty good overall records at the top of this conference. One of those other teams who I believe is finally ready to get back on the court soon, Titel, is Florida State.
Finally being the operative word. They've been resting for an entire week with that 5-1 record. First road game of the year comes this week. They had a Clemson team which only has one loss on Tuesday. Then they host the Dukies on Saturday. I have them around a 5 seed at the moment, but the double-digit home loss to UCF, I don't think that's going to look so great in March. I also don't understand, I like Scotty Barnes as much as anybody, but I don't know if having a 6'9", 227-pound freshman as your point guard is the best recipe for success.
Sleek, I've got the upcoming schedule here on the screen, and I haven't heard them mentioned yet. We're not even talking about the undefeated Wake Forest Demon Deacons.
Well, if we're going to look at Wake Forest, for example, at least they get to host a Syracuse team that, for some reason, doesn't like trash talk very much. But we'll get to that in Under the Radar. Then Wake has to go to Georgia Tech on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I assume that Syracuse Wake game, at least it's still on the schedule for now. I know Syracuse was shut down. I'm not sure if they're opened up, if they're back yet.
Pitt Duke is off. But,
Pitt Duke is definitely off. Yes, thank you.
Pitt, I mean, again, you hate for anybody to get shut down, but not a bad stretch of games after dropping that opener.
Beat Northwestern.
They beat Northwestern.
Yeah.
That's a big win.
Who knew at the time, a game I bet most of us didn't even watch but a few minutes of, that would be such an important game.
But there are some big games coming up this week. I think we'll have a lot more to talk about with the ACC next week when we get through some of these games here. But let's jump right on over to the Big East Conference, and I guess why don't we start with? I guess we should congratulate DePaul for finally getting a couple of games in, including a tough loss, close loss to Providence. They actually played pretty well in that game.
Yeah, they did.
Double overtime.
Yeah, double overtime. Thank you. Stalika, though, your Xavier team finally suffered a loss of the season. Here now 8-1 overall with their loss to Creighton last week.
Well, not terribly surprising when you consider that this was actually their first true road trip of the year. And I don't mean just going 3 miles down the road to UC either, but this has also been another Xavier tradition where they usually lose the game prior to Christmas right here. I mean, look what happened last year when they won at TCU, and suddenly the whole world was literally turned upside down. But anyhow, when you go back to the Creighton-Xavier game, the Musketeers actually got off to a pretty good start, jumped out, I think it was 10-2, and then Creighton came back, actually got out to a big lead themselves at the beginning of the second half. But Creighton, despite winning kind of a rock fight themselves, it's not what you've typically seen out of a McDermott team, but Blue Jays found another way to win, and this looks like a team that could finally be going to the second weekend themselves.
Oh, all right. We'll see. Titel, let me ask you about another team here. They're right there, 3-1 in conference now. How about Seton Hall, who is, not getting any votes at all in either poll anymore at this point?
Very hard resume to figure out. The bad news, they did lose 3 of 4 to start the season, which seems like a recipe for disaster. Good news, all 3 losses were away from home, and all 3 were against solid teams, Louisville, Rhode Island, Oregon. Best news is that since then, they won 5 of 6. They only lost to Providence by 3 in overtime. I think they're squarely right on the bubble. They head to Xavier on Wednesday to finish off the month. They got 5 starters. All of them are juniors and seniors. And you'll see fewer NBA teams with a taller set of big men than 6'11" Sandro Mamukelashvili and 7'2" Ike Obiagu up front. The X factor, as always, Bryce Aiken, the Ivy transfer, comes back from his ankle injury, had a game-high 6 assists in the win over Georgetown last Wednesday.
Joby, you want to talk about squarely the bubble? We kind of talk about what Marquette has done. They're on the right-hand side of the screen. I can't figure this team out yet this season.
I thought the Wisconsin game was a fluke initially, but then they beat Creighton on the road. So you go, well, maybe the Wisconsin win wasn't a fluke, But Yeah, if you look at their losses, every one of their losses, if Oklahoma State is eligible, are to teams that are at least in the discussion for a bit. Not saying they would all get it, but they are all teams in the discussion. That Seton Hall team we just discussed. Marquette is going to drive us nuts. But you know what? That Wisconsin win is going to is going to age well, as it were. And as long as they can get close to 500 in the Big East, I think that they will find themselves dancing in March. But once again, you get to that point of, okay, you get to 500 in the Big East, 18 games, you go 9-9, blah, blah, and there are 4 games above 500. 4 games with the Wisconsin win, I think, does it. But will 3, will 2. That's why you got to be very careful in what you do in conference.
Well, the other notable thing we're going to be looking at this week is Villanova is going to have to hit the pause button because Jay Wright actually tested positive for COVID. So St. John, Xavier, those games are going to be off.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about that. I knew he had tested positive, but I didn't know if they were going to be able to keep playing without him.
Alabama played without Nick Saban. I mean, it's not unheard of.
I'm not 100% certain. I believe that the St. John's game did go off. I don't know if they've officially postponed the Xavier game yet.
It is off.
Okay, it is off. Okay, thanks. All right. So with the big Villanova Xavier game, we'd normally be discussing that. I think it's more of an interesting week ahead, David, for Providence hosting Butler and Creighton.
Yeah, Providence, another team that's kind of been hot and cold. I mean, I think they've been more hot than cold, but the Butler game, I think that's one that you got to win. You got to hold serve there. You don't really want to slip up and be, have a major uphill battle. You're talking about the difference between being 3-1 in league play or just 2-2. Creighton would be a fantastic win. I really like this Creighton team. I loved how they finished last year. I hated it for them. One of the many teams that they didn't get to play in an NCAA tournament. I just think Creighton is really good, and that this is a winnable road game for them as well.
Okay. I'm also be looking at Butler this week. Obviously, the game at Providence just mentioned, also a game at Seton Hall, team that's only played 5 games so far. I don't think we really know that much about them yet. It's just
yeah, we really don't.
I've seen them play enough to know that they kind of stink.
I think I'm with you. I'm not quite ready to go all the way there.
Speaking of stink,
well, let's go to the SEC. And you know what? We've talked Kentucky every week. We already talked some Kentucky. The team is awful. The metrics are bad. I don't know what we could say about Kentucky at this point anymore than we've already said.
Strength of record, my gosh.
Yeah, I did want to say something. Like John Calipari has publicly stated, and it wasn't the first time, that he made a mistake putting together the schedule that he did. And I'm like, that just doesn't feel right. That doesn't sound right. Kentucky always plays a ridiculous out-of-conference schedule. And I went back and looked, and, this one is arguably not even as difficult as some of the ones that they've played in recent years. Now, the one thing that they had in previous years that they don't have now is typically a slate of early November home bye games. And I don't know if that's where they knock the rust off or sharpen themselves up a little bit. But they play Duke. They play North Carolina. They play Kansas. They play Louisville every year. They play Michigan State. Georgia Tech was part of a home and home. They played them last year. They've played Seton Hall. I mean, these are all just within the last 2 or 3 years. Kentucky plays big showcase out-of-conference games. This is nothing new for them.
We do appreciate them giving the ACC a number of wins because the ACC is 1-20 against ranked opponents. So we would like to thank Kentucky and hope that they go undefeated in the SEC.
The thing is, we're going to be
conference.
We're going to be talking about streaks of futility for Kentucky because going into the Louisville game at 1-5, that was their worst mark since 1927. Now we have their worst mark in 107 years at 1-6.
All right. Well, I guess we did end up talking about Kentucky, but let's kind of talk about the good teams of this conference for a few minutes here. And for all we can say about that, there are actually 4 undefeated teams in this conference, believe it or not. Still, Titel, number 1 on the screen there. How about Arkansas?
Sure. If I can do one sentence on Kentucky, they lost to Notre Dame, Louisville, and Kansas by a combined 7 points. So even though they suck, I would not push the panic button just yet.
Okay.
As far as the Razorbacks, the record is a gaudy 8-0, I'll give you that. But it's a little misleading because they're all at home. And even though they're all by double digits, they're all against teams outside the top 100. Even one of Rocco's favorite mid-majors, Abilene Christian, last Tuesday. They start conference play on Wednesday. They go to Auburn. I think they're looking like an 8-9 seed, and because of the inflated numbers, I think they are ripe for turning upset. I see them maybe facing an 8-10 team like a Richmond or St. Louis and getting the doors blown off. They do have great interior defense. They're only allowing 41% inside the arc. And Coach Eric Musselman, he does have a great job in terms of he brings in a team full of transfers. They're scoring 90 a game, and they're top 5 in the country in rebounding and blocks per game. So it's fantastic so far.
Salika, it's also a very interesting week this ahead. Additionally, Arkansas actually is part of this for Missouri, who's hosting Tennessee. And if they can win that game, they're at Arkansas. We could have back-to-back battle of undefeated teams here.
Well, that's certainly going to be the potential right here in Missouri. They've already knocked off Illinois at home, and Tennessee would be a nice feather in the cap because the Vols were a team we thought might struggle a little bit, seeing as how they got off to a later start, but so far that doesn't seem to be the case. I'm still a little sus of Arkansas, though, considering most of their wins haven't been against the best of competition compared to the other two teams.
What's impressive about Tennessee is they have not fallen into the trap that we discussed with Michigan State and Virginia, is that they rely on a structured defensive set that Barnes puts together. They, even with the delayed start, as John hit the ground running. Look at that number 3 and adjust the defense. And it's not like they're playing. They've played their share of decent teams in that mix. So even though the SOS isn't that wonderful, they have played real teams to get to that point.
Right, and David, when you also look ahead here, Florida should be back on the court this week as well. And
yes.
Just a note here on Keontae Johnson, not only back from the hospital, he's actually back with the team. He's not playing, obviously, but he's actually on the sideline, and he's helping coach and scout future teams and everything. So he's getting really involved with the team, which was exciting to hear.
Yeah, that is, and that was not to relive it. That was a very scary, unsettling thing, and you almost. I'm just glad that he's okay, and you hope that you don't see anything like that happen really ever again.
Right, but when you look at this conference overall here, when we do have 8 teams with either 0 or 1 losses, so this is another conference where I don't know that I've seen enough of some of these teams because so many have been shut down that you have there's so many questions about teams like LSU, Ole Miss, A&M. Are these teams any good, or are they just frauds at this point?
Right. And a lot of these records, and I know that we've sort of alluded this with Arkansas, but they aren't the only ones. They've kind of run up these bloated records against, they've gone to the bakery to get them. Missouri has looked extremely impressive. I think Tennessee has as well. But everybody else, it's like, when are you going to, put some meat on your resume?
Yeah. Joby?
No, look at the strength of schedule line. That should tell you everything you know. When you looked at the Big Ten, when you looked at the Big East, when you looked at the ACC, very few teams had SOSs in the 200s. Arkansas, 299. Only 335 teams have even played yet this year, if I'm right. That's awful.
Yeah.
Absolutely awful. Vanderbilt, okay, we give you a pass, but A&M, Tennessee's at least played a few good teams.
Go Buzz.
Oh, God, yeah.
If we want to talk about bad Titel, let's jump over to the Pac-12. Oh. But let's start with that. Let's pass for a moment.
Washington's played a better schedule than Arkansas.
Why don't we talk about the only top 25 rated team in the Pac-12 starting with Oregon?
You like the OAR 16. I mean, that's pretty good, I think. They did have a 7-point loss, but it's to an undefeated Missouri team to start the month. They've won 6 in a row. They've been resting for a week and a half before they host Cal on New Year's Eve. It's sad that we've reached a point where a Pac-12 champ might not even get a top 5 seed in the tournament. Very bad news, though. Big man and N'Faly Dante tore his left ACL against San Francisco a couple weeks ago, done for the year. The good news, sadly for Chad, is that they do have the best Omoruyi in the country as Rutgers transfer Eugene, scoring 18 a game, while Clifford, who's still at Rutgers, out with a sprained knee.
Yeah. Cliff is out for a little while here, and it's really hurting that depth that I was screaming about. But I just switched conferences on us there. Salika, is it time to finally start paying attention to this 8-0 Washington State team, or do they finally go back down to earth by hosting the 2 Arizona schools this week?
Well, I still think at home they can probably actually pull off both of these games. So ask me next week when they go ahead and begin to hit the road. I'm not sold on Arizona State. They've been pretty scattershot themselves.
Yeah, David. I mean,
okay.
Tell me I want to hear it, but I'm not a big fan of what I've seen for either of these Arizona schools so far this season.
I'm really not either, but I'm not a believer in Wazoo either. Pull up their resume. I mean, this is a little bit.
It stinks. It's 296 strength of schedule. They've been nobody.
I mean, they did win or was it at Idaho? I mean, big road win there, 8 miles apart. But I'm just not. I think this is a little bit of a reflection of one of the weakest schedules, which is I was shocked to see that it was actually stronger than Arkansas's. But that's
it's all
there. It is.
All at home.
And Oregon State. I mean, a 4-point home win over Oregon State, who is about 100 miles from the NIT in the wrong direction, is their signature win at the moment. Now, if they beat the Arizona schools, I'll sit up and take notice. But right now, I think that there's about 200 teams that would have this same record.
Hey, David.
Yes.
They beat 2 of the 3 SWAC bid teams. For the 3 bid SWAC, 2 of them.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And a 3-point win. Oh, I'm sorry. That was a home game against Idaho that they won by 3.
Yeah. And a 4-point win over Texas Southern and a 3-point win over Eastern Washington. Powerful schedule.
Yeah. I've actually watched some of their games because, they are undefeated. I watched the Idaho game and was not impressed.
Joby, the team on the right there, we're actually, as we record this right now, Colorado is in a tight game in the first half at Arizona.
High scoring game, by the way.
Yeah. You sold on this team. They haven't beat anybody really of note yet.
No, they lost to Tennessee in, showing that Barnes defense I was talking about in the last conference. Beating Kansas State's not anything this year. Colorado, I think, is a tournament team because of just the strength of will that will happen in what is a down conference. But, someone's got a bubble up top. I think they are. They'll be ahead of Utah, for instance, and Washington State by the end of the year. So they're a tournament team, but Titel kind of hinted at it with Arkansas. They have that same feel a little bit right now as Arkansas, but let's see it play out. The Pac-12, UCLA's competitive, Stanford's competitive, Oregon is good, USC's competitive, Arizona's competitive. I do think the Arizona schools are competitive. I think Colorado might be the best of all of those, but not by a ton. But someone is going to emerge and go dancing. Probably multiple will emerge and go dancing.
It's going to be an interesting week for Colorado. After this Arizona game, they've got the trip to USC and UCLA coming up this week as well. So when these games happen, as always, you have to qualify all future game previews with that. But it could be a huge week for Colorado, or it could be a bad week for Colorado. We'll see.
Right.
Salika, let's jump over the American Conference now, where Houston continued to win. They are now up to 7-0 with not only a win over Temple last week, but a real nice road win at UCF team that was just coming off of that Florida State win.
Yeah, it was a couple nice wins for Houston, who's been in the top 10 for the first time since the Phi Slamma Jamma days, and even Wichita State sneaking down into South Florida and getting a nice road win here.
Hold on a second. Here's what I have to say about that. Yeah. Let's not talk about Wichita State ever again this season. I don't see anything there. In fact, Titel, I really only see if Central Florida is not going to be anything. I only see one other team of note in this conference. That's the 5-0 SMU team.
With a 29 OAR, I would say so. They have 2 weeks of rest before heading to Temple on Wednesday, and then a fantastic matchup against Houston on Sunday. One of the best free throw shooting teams in the country, 80%, top 10. All 5 starters are juniors and seniors, and Kendrick Davis remains one of the best point guards in the country. 20 points, 8 assists a game, 20 of 21 at the free throw line. The most amazing part of this team, their leading returning scorer, Tyson Jolly, has been out all season because of personal issues. I think they're looking like a double-digit seed right now, and I would love to see them get a favorable tourney matchup. If they get a young team like Carolina, if they get a team with a coach who's unproven in the postseason like Travis Steele at Xavier, I think they could win a first-round game.
Chad, I actually think Central Florida, John started putting dirt on them. Central Florida played as Houston tough. Don't let the 9-point finish fool you. I mean, Central Florida had a shot in that game.
I'm with Joby. I've been impressed with Central Florida. They haven't been on the court very much. Yeah, pull them up, please.
I want to pull them up because and Dave, go ahead. Then I want to tell you what my problem is with them. Go ahead.
The win at Florida State, rather decisive. The win at Cincinnati, or the home win against Cincinnati, and then the close game against Houston. I think that it's a very small sample size, but I kind of like what I've seen from them.
Well, let me tell you my problem now.
And that's okay. Yeah.
Here's my problem with it. Look at this remaining schedule. They have 2 remaining chances. They're both at home to pick up any win of any note whatsoever. And that is Houston and SMU at home. If they can't win those 2 games and pretty much every other game on this schedule, I don't know that they do have SMU on the road there. I just saw that. But I don't know where the chances are this season, because they were not impressive in beating what I think is not a good Cincinnati team. They were not very impressive in beating what I don't think is a very good Auburn team. I think we have maybe a Florida State fluke win as opposed to a quality team. That's what I've seen so far.
There's another way to look at that's an opportunity to bloat out their record. And to your point, there isn't a whole lot of meat there, but I don't think it's quite the same as playing in the Southland either. I mean, I think that it's good enough to where if they go the rest of the way with only 1 or 2 losses, that they'll be inside the bubble.
If they are 22, I don't know, I can't do the math real quick, just looking at it, but if they are 21-5 with a Florida State win, they're getting in over a 14-13 Indiana team.
Okay, but I don't agree with you, Joby.
No.
I don't agree with you. I think from what we've seen from the Big Ten, this seen from the Americans so far this season, I would take a 14-13 Indiana team over a 21-5 UCF team.
I don't think the committee will, especially because of the Florida State win. That Florida State win is everything to them. Yes, if the Noles fall flat on their face in the ACC, Central Florida's. If you're a Central Florida fan out there, your most important games are the games your teams play. The second most important games are watching what Florida State does, because you need to keep that as a protected seed type level win. If you do, and you are that record, you are in. I truly believe.
I'll tell you what. Let's ask our selection committee guessing expert, Titel. From what you've seen so far this season, would you take a 500 Big Ten team or a bloated record UCF team?
I hear Joby and I see his point, and it's a good one, but I think I would err on the side of, not because it's a bad argument, Joby, just because, like Chad says, the Big Ten is so amazing that even if you have a 500 record, you're going to have so many Tier 1 wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm with Titel on this.
We'll see how it breaks down.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of basketball to play before we get there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they could end up 18-14, and we're not even, or something like that.
Right. If they need to hit the 20 win mark this year, there's no doubt. At least I will give that.
It's not just a 500 team.
19 and 8 ain't going to do it.
Yeah.
It's not just a 500 team from the Big Ten, but 500 teams in the Big East, Big 12 are also teams.
I think they're going to be looked at down. I think if your overall record, not the conference record, but if your overall record is 500, I don't think that. I think a 20-win team with tier 1 wins, with a tier 1 win like Central Florida, is getting in this year. I think that is going to be a dynamic that we are going to see.
Let's move on. I've already brought the Atlantic 10 standings up here, and David, we actually discussed it during our Under the Radar podcast last week. So let me ask Sleek about it, because he wasn't on that podcast. Richmond with almost a disastrous home loss to Hofstra about almost a week ago now.
Well, obviously we can't talk about Kentucky really being a good win anymore, at least not until February. But the Spiders, that's going to take away some of their margin for error. So now you're looking at St. Louis as possibly leading the flagship right here.
Yeah, still really like what we see now in St. Louis. Bonnie's only played 2 games. They're 2-0, but they haven't played any games yet. You can also
Yeah,
put the undefeated Fordham team here,
right.
0-0, but
and you sort of see no one has really emerged. It looked like Richmond had for a second, but I mean that loss to Hofstra, who's good by Colonial standards, good by UTR standards, not really good by at-large standards. Not a game that you want to lose at home if you're trying to get an at-large team. VCU Dayton, nothing bad really on either profile, but nothing really strong either. And it's just like, where are the signature wins? Like, where are the wins that pop? Because we all look at resumes. It's part of what we do, and I think that we all have those wins and those things on a resume that kind of pop out. And I'm not really seeing it from very many teams in this conference yet. And part of that is due to lack of opportunity. It's hard for these teams to get those types of out-of-conference games in a normal year, much less in an abnormal one. And then the other problem is sort of is some of the heavy – is there going to be a lot of dead weight that drags down the matrix with the likes of Fordham, GW, Joe's, some of these teams.
Yeah. Let me say here, this is why I don't think you can lose to a team like Richmond. Can't lose the home game to Hofstra. I think it's going to be a loss they've got to be fighting to overcome all season. You mentioned the dead weight at the bottom there. GW, to make things even worse, they just had 2 players, including Jameer Nelson Jr., just leave the team. So GW has gone from bad to worse. But Titel, you mentioned the Dayton team. How about them? 4-1 overall.
Only a 2-point home loss to an undefeated SMU team. They're this close to perfection. I think they're on the wrong side of the bubble right now, only because they didn't beat SMU, and their 4 wins are by a combined 15 points. They're just doing enough to get those wins. They ease into conference play with 3 more winnable games before heading to Davidson in a couple of weeks. 4 senior starters. I just wonder what would have happened if Obi Toppin had not turned pro and come back with 4 senior starters around him. And I don't claim to be as good a coach as Anthony Grant. He's the defending national coach of the year, for God's sake. But if your team is shooting 40% from behind the arc, why are you only taking 16 threes a game? Coach, shoot more threes.
That's a good point. I'm glad that you pointed that out because, I mean, again, Anthony Grant, a phenomenal bench coach. We saw that last year, but not taking a lot of shots considering how well they shoot the ball. I think I know, Titel, if Obi Toppin were here, I bet they would have beaten SMU.
Okay. The upcoming schedule for the week is up there. Joby, the one team that I'm still kind of like heading into the season, they're 2-0 so far, is the Bonnies. Real interesting week at Rhode Island, at Richmond this week. This might be the week we learn something about them.
Well, and, if it's Team A beats Team B so they can beat Team C, the Bonnies did take out Hofstra among their 2 wins. They got a neutral court win over a decent Akron team who's that top 120-ish sort of team. We're going to see a lot more about the Bonnies. Like you said, road tests against teams that are definitely, in the case of Rhode Island, definitely tested. They played everybody under the sun, it seems like. Look at the schedule. Oh, they played Rhode Island. Yeah. And then Richmond, who I still, despite the Hofstra loss, I still believe Richmond is the team to beat in this conference. But let's see if the Bonnies have something to say about it.
Now, also, St. Bonaventure, real quick question about the Bonnies, and I don't know the answer. Have they been able to schedule any more notable out-of-conference games because they need to?
Not that we've seen so far, but we'll keep an eye on that. But just want to note it's also an interesting week for St. Louis, hosting a pretty good Duquesne team that's only gotten 2 games in so far, and then they're hosting UMass on Saturday. Let's jump over to the Mountain West Conference, our last conference for the night. And Stalika, let me start with you here. Notable win, we mentioned it briefly earlier, San Diego State beat St. Mary's. Maybe that's not notable, but 74-49, I think is.
Well, I mean, that's not unusual for St. Mary's because they also got blown out of the water about this time against Dayton last year. But that's still going to be a feather in the cap for the Aztecs right here. And I think we had also discussed Boise State as another potential spoiler. They also get a significant win home against New Mexico here.
Yeah, I don't know how significant it's a win, but it is a win, and they are actually getting votes in the top 25 polls. You got a few other teams with decent records. Fresno State undefeated, hasn't played a D1 team yet. Titel, what about Wyoming in there at 6-1?
I love the 6 wins, but that loss, you have to look into it. It was a 2-point home loss to Texas Southern last month. They blew a 21-point second-half lead. Talk about a killer for the resume.
How about that 320 strength of schedule? Yeah, go ahead.
That's also, they got a first-year coach in Jeff Linder. He inherited a 24-loss team, and he doesn't have a single senior on his roster, but he's 6-1 with only a 2-point home loss. So give him a little credit. They're off. Then they head to Fresno for a pair of games to open conference play next weekend. And point guard Marcus Williams, he's one of the best freshmen in the entire country. 18 points, 5 assists a game.
And you know, you talk about strength of schedule. Look at Boise's strength of schedule. Now, Houston's part of that. Houston's part of that, and the fact they've played a bunch of teams ranked right at like around the 100 level, like New Mexico, a ton of times.
BYU, yeah.
Weber, but they did beat BYU. Boise could be very interesting. We're going to find out, not against San Jose State, but we're going to find out as the season goes on. Boise could be, those Boise-San Diego State games are going to be so crucial, I think, particularly for Boise, because if they can pull one of those off, then all of a sudden, hey, these guys aren't counterfeit. And the metrics, if New Mexico continues to, be okay, and Weber runs to the Big Sky, all of a sudden, and BYU does what I think most of us think will happen in the WCC, which is a strong second place to Gonzaga. All of a sudden, people are going to look at the metric and go, Boise State, maybe they should be handpicked for a bid. But they probably need a win over San Diego State. If they have it, even at home, I don't even think they have to win on the road. Even at home, I think you could be seeing Boise State in the dance.
I like this Boise team. I'm already sold on them. I think they're inside the bubble.
They only lost to Houston by 10. I know.
Yeah, they did. At first, I was like,
so they're a real team.
Yeah, and again, winning at BYU, and that Houston game was close. I know Houston sort of opened it up at the very end, but I like them against BYU. I mean, they took New Mexico completely apart. Nothing really else to speak of, but they're good.
Yeah, I just note that they are scheduled. They're doing the back-to-back with a day in between, but the pair of road games or pair of home games, both their San Diego State games are on the road at the end of the season, last 2 games of the season, as scheduled right now. We'll see if that plays out.
Even their predictive metrics, which show bias, which it would not be good for Boise. Even their predictive metrics are reasonable right now.
Igron's really good, yeah.
They will only improve as last year's totals get faded out over the next few weeks. So it's going to be very interesting not to overpump them. They could all of a sudden lose 4 or 5 games in the Mountain West and their at-large bid is gone. But this is a team to watch if you're looking in this. When I talk about, we just got in the argument over it, Big Ten might be capped because teams will wind up with losing records just because they lose to each other. Where do those bids go? They go to places like Boise State.
Boise State this week, 2 games at San Jose State. One of San Jose State's better players just opted out for the season, so it's getting worse for the Spartans, unfortunately. But let's at this point, let's move over to final thoughts. And Titel, I think you wanted to start things off here on the final thoughts, if I'm right.
Chad created my arts and crafts project to give me a chance to reflect on the year that is 2020. So mostly sadness. We got the Kansas State brawl in the upper left, and we got the death of Lute Olson, as well as many other coaches like John Thompson and Anthony Stewart in the lower left. We had the tournament canceled in March with the entire Ivy season canceled in November. It's been a pretty crappy year, I'll be the first to admit it. However, there were some good memories. We got Merrimack in the lower right, becoming the first team in men's history to ever win 20 games in its first year at D1 level. We have Marcus Howard in the upper right corner, becoming one of the top 25 scorers in the history of college basketball. And we have Gonzaga steamrolling everyone in their path this past month. I have no idea what's going to happen in 2021, and I don't even pretend to. As long as we see some madness at any point, it'll make my year.
I agree with you completely there. Joby, let me move over to you.
Okay. This has been discussed on this show before. I'm going to reiterate it. The NCAA, there's a cliche. The only thing the NCAA does right is run a basketball tournament. And This year, I'm really worried they're not going to be able to do that well at all again, because we've said it before. They've painted themselves into a corner. I do not know why you do not openly talk about flexibility, giving the conferences the ability to flexibility. Because now, if you have the Big Ten and the ACC, Duke is shut down, shut off, and K's been loud about it. But the fact is, if all of a sudden we reach March and teams have not been able to flex their schedules, but some conferences have had brief shutdowns and not, you're going to see similar fights to what we saw in the college football playoff with Dabo Swinney shooting arrows at Ohio State for not playing enough games. And you're supposed to look at metrics in a room, and you're supposed to look at eye tests that may never have happened because teams don't play. And you've painted yourself in the corner, and you're not going to be able to delay it, because it's not fair to let's hypothetically say a Big Ten goes through relatively unscathed. It's not fair to the Big Ten that all of a sudden you say, well, because the ACC, notice I'm purposely choosing them, the ACC had to shut down, and Duke only has 14 games. It's not our fault. Yeah, it's not your fault. You know whose fault it is? It's not Duke. It's not the Big Ten. It's not the ACC. It's the NCAA and Mark Emmert. Show some brains and flexibility. But of course, you can't show brains if you don't have any.
Amen. I think we should end the show there, but we're not going to Sleeka. How about you?
Yeah, I think I'd mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but Duke and Michigan State still have a couple weird things in common right here. Both are undefeated against the ACC, with Michigan State now owning wins against both Duke and Notre Dame. And Duke has also beaten the Fighting Irish, but they're also winless in the Big Ten, because we do have a final score now with Minnesota beating Michigan State 81-56. So that puts Sparty at 0-3 and Duke now at 0-2 because of the Sparty and Illinois losses. So conceivably, have we ever seen two teams that could meet in the ACC championship game and the Big Ten play-in game?
Oh, geez. I got to say, just one quick note there about Duke. If you saw this week, the Duke's women's program shut down for the rest of the season because of COVID. We also saw on the men's side, not quite the same level, but Chicago State, who was been perennially one of the worst teams in D1, 0-9 already on the season. They've shut down for the rest of the season. I hope things are getting better, and I hope we don't see any more of this, because that's when the NCAA tournament would start falling apart, especially without, as Joby mentioned, the flexibility by the NCAA to find a way to get this done. But David, let me let you finish off the show.
Okay. My first thought, real quick, something I mentioned off air before the show, was just the number of teams that we've seen that just seem to have come out of nowhere. We see it every year with one or two, but I don't think we've seen four that were projected to not only not be good, but projected to be bad, like Northwestern, Minnesota, Missouri, and Virginia Tech, just kind of come out of nowhere to be as high in the rankings as they are. That's been something that's been kind of fun to watch this season. The other thing to kind of build on what Joby said is that the NCAA, you hope that there's something going on behind closed doors that we're not privy to discuss how they are going to administer a 67-team tournament when we can't get through a given day with 20 or 30 games without having multiple games shut down. You can't just postpone or cancel NCAA tournament games. The way the tournament plays out, you have to play games in order to get games in the next round set up. I hope that they're having those discussions. The other thing is that the NCAA men's basketball tournament might be the mastodon in the room, but there's 89 other elephants in the room. How are they going to administer 90 championships over 3 divisions that are going to be facing similar issues? Team sports and individual sports. Is there going to be a plan across the board on what to do if games need to be delayed or shut down because of COVID? And you kind of wonder if I don't know. I have my own ideas and thoughts. My suggestion would be to not play the tournament in March, but to play it in May. And then, as much as I hate to say it, maybe not having all 90 of the championships. The men's basketball tournament, because of the revenue that it generates from television, you almost need to find a way to play it, and you need to find a way to play it uninterrupted, on schedule. And I don't know how to do that unless you delay it to May. I wasn't going to say that. I was going to save that, but I felt so compelled by what Joby said to kind of further his point that I hate that that's my last thought of the year. But yes, I am really scared, puppet aside, character aside, that we are not going to get this event in.
Well, I would like to think there's at least going to be some flexibility among the TV networks, because you also have the NBA playoffs are going to be delayed this year. So TNT, TBS, you should be able to get some games in May. Should that be the case?
Yeah, I think the networks would be fine doing it in May. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I don't know this. I'm not a TV executive. I think they would rather it be in May if they knew that it would go on as scheduled and uninterrupted.
Yeah, I mean, presumably we'll have vaccines in everybody's arms by then. I agree completely. I think it makes the most sense, but let's see what happens. Let's see how the next couple months play out. But I do want to take a chance now to thank everybody for having joined us, not only tonight, but all year long here on Hoops HD. We actually have one more podcast before the end of the year. It's going to be our Under the Radar podcast coming up Wednesday night. But this is our last Hoops HD report of the year. We'll be back next Monday. It'll be 2021. It'll be a new world. Everything will be better. I hope.
We hope.
But on behalf of John Salika, John Titel, Joby Forson, David Griggs, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again next year.